Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Ellensburg, Washington, USA. I'm glad you could join us this morning. Here's to you. I guess if I toast you, I should drink, right? The local time is 9:47, and we will begin our program, the last of three major sessions on exotic terranes. We'll start exotic terrain session 3 at 10 o'clock, a little bit more than 10 minutes from now. But we are live right now, and I'll be visiting with a few folks, and there's a beautiful smell in the room at the moment. I'll explain. But before we begin with that, let's make sure that we're doing okay. Are we 5x5? Where are you viewing from? And here we go, says Mr. Miner. Gifford, Washington, 188 miles from Vinman's Bakery. That was Carol. Leslie, good morning. Somebody asks questions or wonders. Boy, come on now. Come on, baby. Somebody wonders pastries? Yes, as a matter of fact. Jeff from Vinman's Bakery was just here with a delivery, fresh from the oven. Oh my God, too fast to read. I'll just grab Kansas City, Portugal, Houston, Texas, the middle of Georgia. Kirk is in Sweden. The lovely Stillaguamish Valley in western Washington. Glenda's in the foothills of California. I'll stay out of the way of the outline here. Marietta, Georgia, northern British Columbia. Rebecca, it's nice to always have you chime in from what are you near a town in northern BC? I'd like to look up where you are, Rebecca. Hello again from Greece. Hello. The Dorset, UK, central Scotland, Brussels, Belgium, Spa, UK. Virgil's in Ferndale, Washington. Passive Margin, that's Moneta, Virginia. Biloxi, Mississippi. Happy Women's Day. Happy Women's Day. It's hard to keep track of those kinds of things. Grangeville, Idaho. Netherlands. Philadelphia. We got Eve and Tawny, we got Aiden, and we got Bryce the Interloper. We've got Emily One and Tim, and we have Glenn, who drove over from Spokane to join us today. Towny Glenn. Dick from the Netherlands. Enjoyed another Nora Lee Itchy Boots video this morning. Particularly enjoyed it. She's zooming around on dirt roads in South Africa. Always inspiring to watch those. I'm always in a great mood after watching one of the Itchy Boots video sessions. Okay, so looks like we're doing okay. That's wonderful, and we have more than 400. Well, I think I'll wait. The smell is so wonderful, but I'm going to wait just a second. I don't have a Mason sighting yet, but I have mail from Mason. So Eric and Jay from Bakersfield, California, special delivery to Mason. So thank you. Yeah, I opened it up and I was like, oh, what's this? And they're like, do not open for Mason. Like, okay. Probably anthrax all over some sort of whatever. Google anthrax and 9/11, everybody. You'll know. Tom Brokaw. You'll get it. A nice letter and card and rock, green rock, from Sheila and Michael in Linden, Washington, and we are talking a little bit about green rocks this morning. So I thought I would share with the group. But thank you for the gift, and sounds like they stopped in at Vinman's and bought a little gift card for Liz. So I will pass that along to her. We still only have, we don't have many, but I'm about to, some of these guys are eyeballing this bakery thing, and I don't blame you. Let's do it now. So You may recall we did this earlier in the quarter, and somebody from Puyallup, I can't remember actually, somebody sent in an order. Who is it, Bryce? Pardon? Or was it from Kelso Longview? Yeah, Keith in Kelso Longview. Bryce thinks is the person who did this last time. And we have another whole rack of right out of the oven downtowners. This episode of Nick from the Classroom brought to you by Vindman's Bakery in downtown Ellensburg, Washington, home of the downtowner, Vindman's Bakery. You've got to love it. So this is Anonymous in Issaquah, Washington, which is in the outskirts of Seattle. So Anonymous from Issaquah who actually dropped in on Friday, I guess, and visited with Jeff at Vindman's Bakery, and he said, please buy a downtowner for everybody and deliver it Monday morning. That's what we're doing. Okay, everybody, good morning, Monday morning. Come on, time to feed the chickens. Here we go. Let's go. I'm forcing you. It's not an option. Leave your chair. Come over, please. Grab one of these. Thank you. They're beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. They're all saying thank you. Glenn, come on now. It's worth the drive, Glenn. Why not? Cash in. All right. So lots of smiles. I guess everybody's under their mask, but and I guess, yeah, they got to take the mask off to eat. I can see some people. Wait a minute. I get to watch people eat and see what the bottom half of their face is. Tim, that's what you look like? Wait a minute. Eve? Oh, interesting. Oh, I'm seeing chins. Okay, this is creepy now. Okay. Happy Women's Day, everybody. Got a guy over 50 watching you eat. Okay. Yeah, help yourself, Glenn, to the agates, too. Yeah, please do. So while everybody's enjoying the pastry from Anonymous in Issaquah, I remind you that this is the last week of our 101 class. We have tomorrow and we have Thursday. Thursday is the last lecture, but I've made a little progress. Hey, Ben, you come on down for one of these? You watching upstairs? Yeah, I was watching. Okay, Ben. All right. Ben, the grad student, come on up here. I want you to say good morning to these guys, and they enjoy you, and you can thank Anonymous in Issaquah.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. This is Vinnigan. Thank you for the snacks. I told you, Nick, eating this stuff, I'm going to be the biggest thing in geology one way or another. 5'7", 400 pounds.
There it is. There it is. All right. So we got Ben, the grad student, watching live upstairs. He heard pastry and hustled down before they're gone. Morning, JC. We got breakfast for you here. Jeff, the townie, come on in, man. We got breakfast for you, bud. Okay. So I have made a little bit of progress for next quarter. And so there's a tiny chance this will change, but this is the plan, and I wanted to give you all a heads up. So I will be live streaming my next class in spring quarter. First day of class is March 30th, Tuesday, March 30th. And I'll be in this room, I think. I'll use the same setup, I think. I'll have a new crop of 20 students, with the exception of Bryce, who will be upgraded from interloper to loper. And you'll be the baby of the group, Bryce. There'll be a bunch of juniors and seniors and you. So you better... eat your Flintstones vitamins. What? So this is the plan. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1 o'clock. And I'm hesitating because I'm still trying to work with vans and that sort of thing. But it's not looking good. There might be some field stuff as well, but I don't know if that's going to be part of what I present to you. So anyway, I'll remind you of this tomorrow and Thursday as well. It's quiet in the room, and that's because everybody's eating their downtowners, which is wonderful. A couple more hellos, and I'll, again, try to stay out of your way here, everybody's way. And our goal is to get to get very fancy this morning. It has the potential to be extra wild, but I'll try to stay on task. Who else can I say hi to? Saber is still in Baja. He's 1,760 miles from Vindman's Bakery. Yeah, Saber, you're in San Ignacio. Good to track you down there. I've been tracking you on my phone, but that's a whole nother matter. Calgary, Alberta. Tacoma. Wellington, New Zealand. Hope all is well down there. Belgium. Rochester, Minnesota. Hello, Daryl from Big Z. The mouth is watering. Oh, yeah. Did you want another shot? How many? We got any left? Oh, good. I'm Emily, too. Hello.
Hello.
Did you all go into Vindman's using your gift card?
I don't know where it is.
You don't know where Vindman... Eve does not know where Vindman's Bakery is. Bryce is helping her out. Oh, Lord. Come on, Bryce. It's right across from Kamola. It's like 100 steps from here. Eve, you go out those doors, you hang a right, you keep going until you leave campus, and there it is. Spladam right in front of you. There's a little hut with the Hispanic. Yeah. Get your hair done, Women's Day, then you go next door and you get a bunch of Danishes, and then you go back and get your hair. What? Dry cleaning, Tim. It's between the dry cleaners and the hair place. Spladam. I'm actually experimenting again. You remember there's that thumbnail. When we're done with these, it shows up as a little kind of movable thumbnail. My goal is to have this be the thing that shows up for this show. Because I really don't know how it works. Pedro, there's some food for you. You hungry? From Anonymous. Clarence Anonymous in Issaquah. All right, I've beaten that to death. Vindman's Bakery, you gotta love it. We do not have a Mason sighting. He's not getting his gift. So we're going to open it instead. Give me 30 seconds, would you please, and then we will begin. Casey, help yourself to a Danish. You bet. Good morning, everybody. It's always a pleasure to see you. It's especially a pleasure to see you this late in the quarter. We've had excellent attendance, which is, in normal quarters before this whole pandemic thing, there would be a dwindling number of people as the quarter goes on, just because it's too hard or it's too whatever. But I know that many of us need this human interaction on a regular basis. And so you've been steady the whole quarter, and I thank you for that. Of course, this is the last week of class. Of course, our final exam is this Friday, at the end of this week. Of course, labs are done. And I've gotten the field trip reports from all of you, so I'm for my lab students, I'm good. So we will finish strong in here. I'm not much of a whimperer. I'm not much of a kind of a coast to the finish type of a person, and you could probably anticipate that. So today is a challenge because we've been off for the weekend. We got to get right back in mentally to this exotic terrain stuff. This is the last of our exotic terrain lectures. Tomorrow and Thursday go together. It's a 2-day lecture on some rocks just north of town. And then we're done. Okay, so without further ado, actually I'll pause. Some of you you're busy eating and you got crumbs and you got stuff all over, so I'll give you another couple seconds here. I remind you that this exotic terrain section of the class has been redone. And I think I'd like to start with some bookkeeping for you. Yellow book, what's the one that we're going to cross out? So 42, we're not crossing 42 out. All we did was change suspect to exotic. That's no big whoop. And we know the boundary between the craton and the exotic terrain. So 42 is pretty good shape. 43, okay? So you could tear it right out if you wanted. If you wanted to rip that puppy out, up to you. But it was the way I taught this for most of my time here over the last 25 years. I knew there was way more going on. I knew deep down that some of what I was teaching was wrong. And I am relieved to finally have good information. And so I'm going to redo this at some point. But what we're doing here on the chalkboard is a way to kind of make this all work. Okay? So get rid of 43, at least mentally. And then the very last page of the yellow book is what we're doing tomorrow and Thursday. So that's where we're coming. So we're at the end of the yellow book. I guess we're almost done with the frickin' class. Okay, I'm done stalling. This is going away. We are starting with a very quick review of British Columbia's exotic terrains, and I need you right off the bat. I need some energy in the room to try to get this going. That's important to set up what we want to do south of us in Oregon and California and look for those exotic terrains down there. Then we land here in Washington, and we will not leave Washington for the rest of the week. We'll try to ask some questions about how can we correlate between north of us and south of us, and how does that impact what we have here in Washington. I do want to go to some specific exotic terrains called the Ingalls Ophiolite and the Josephine Ophiolite. There'll be a couple of other specifics for you, but I wanted to get those down since it's kind of a weird word, Ophiolite. And then we will finish, hopefully have a good enough time to talk about something called Baja, BC, which is a very complicated set of ideas. But Baja, BC, when we learn about it, is an action that happens starting 85 million years ago and ending 55 million years ago. And so we will end with the most complicated set of ideas, basically to say to be continued. If you ever take another geology class from me or other people, you may come back to that Baja BC story. Okay, so the outline is gone. So here we go. British Columbia is the best place to look at exposure of exotic terrains. This is the work that we did on Friday, and I did not erase it because I wanted to get right back to this. So I'm ready from you. What does IMS stand for? Let's go. What does IMS stand for? The intermontane superterrane, composed of 3 individual terrains, Quinella, Cache Creek, and Stickinia. When did intermontane superterrane accrete? 170 million years ago. Thank you, Eve. All 3 of these hooked up out in the ocean somewhere and then accreted as a superterrane, the intermontane superterrane, 170 million years ago. What the rocks of Quinella tell us, what did those rocks look like out in the water? What was the original look of Quinella before it accreted? Anybody? Thank you. Eve again? Connie? Who spoke? Oh my God. Wow. Kieran. Okay, nice. An island arc out in the ocean. Bunch of islands like the Marianas Islands. Okay, great. Same for Stickinia. Cache Creek, what was the story there? Where did the rocks of Cache Creek come from, and what evidence do we have for that? This is on Friday's exam, obviously, so I'm just trying to get you ready to go. Cache Creek, Casey. Oceanic plateau with what on top of that basalt? Limestone, good. What was in the limestone, Casey? Somebody else, what was in the limestone? The Tethyan fossils. What does that mean? Tethyan fossils. What's the significance of the limestone in Cache Creek having Tethyan fossils? What does that tell us? It's very, very, Casey. reading his notes. That's good. I love it. Thank you. You are right. The Tethyan fossils tell us that oceanic plateau, Cache Creek, with the limestone sitting on top Cache Creek, came from across the Pacific Ocean, was originally in the Tethys Sea, which is the opposite side of a huge body of water during Pangea time, and this thing arrives here. So this is an Asian import, Cache Creek, if you didn't get that before. We're done. Now our coastline is here in central British Columbia, but here comes another superterrane. The name, Insular superterrane, composed of two individual terranes, the Alexander terrane and the Wrangellia terrane. What's the story for either of those? Take your pick. Alexander?
Was from Europe.
Pedro. Alexander was from Europe. What rocks are we talking about that match with Europe? Nice. Metamorphic gneiss and some red sandstone. Beautifully done. So we have a Eurasian or a European immigrant, the Alexander, showing up, but it doesn't come in by itself. It's the Alexander terrane that hooks up with the Wrangellia terrane offshore. What's the story about Wrangellia? Eve. It has the Carmoutzen basalt within it. Somebody got the age of the Carmoutzen? Between 230 and 225 million years ago. So an incredible pile of basalt built very quickly an oceanic plateau. We still don't really understand them very well, but it was an oceanic plateau. That is the central piece of what we were discussing with Wrangellia. There's more to Wrangellia, which we did not discuss. So the Wrangellia oceanic plateau hooks up with the Eurasian gneiss and red sandstone somewhere out in the Pacific Ocean. And those two guys, the superterrane called Insular, accrete when? Oh, come on, easiest part. When? 100 million years ago. Right. So by 100 million years ago, we have built the province of British Columbia. We didn't have any of this stuff 200 million years ago. We have it all 100 million years ago. Okay, we could quit right there and say that's the end of exotic terrain discussion. And I think that'd be fine for a Geology 101 class. But we got to talk about Washington. We got to talk about Washington. And to talk about Washington, what I want to do is go to California and Oregon. You're like, what? Let's go to Washington, man. If you just want to talk about Washington, and I do, why don't you just cross the border and go to Washington? The answer is it's difficult to recognize how Washington's terrains fit into the story that I just told. It's a nice, simple, kind of coherent story. I don't know, can I do it? I didn't plan on doing this. I'm not going to label everything again, but here's our intermontane in British Columbia. Here's our insular in British Columbia. And now I want to cross the border and come. Here's Ellensburg. We're not far from all of this. This North Cascades area of Washington is the main place to go in the state of Washington to find these exotic terrains. The page from your yellow book that you are crossing out is essentially this, which is a geologic map of the state of Washington. Yellow are all the flood basalts, which are just covering up our exotic terrains. But you can see these colors up here in northern Washington. That's where the mountains are, the North Cascades, and that's where our exotic terrains are. And as we discussed quickly last time, all of these incredible exotic terrains continue beneath this pile, beneath the German chocolate cake, but we have no idea what it looks like down there. So, as I mentioned last time, and I'll say it again right now, I always did, not just wanted, I did. I would always drive north to Chelan, to Tenasket, to all these places, to the San Juan Islands. And I would look at these exotic terrains in Washington and I couldn't make any sense of it. It was just so complicated and I had no regional context. And so finally I decided to go up to British Columbia and do what we just did. Before we come back to this, I want to go south. I want to go on the other side of the German chocolate cake and look at the exotic terrains in Oregon and California. And I'm not going to go crazy with this, but I can do a couple of things. Ready? Here we go. Got the pencils ready? There's a mountain range here in northeastern Oregon. The Blue Mountains. I don't have to write it. You can write that. Blue Mountains. There are exotic terrains exposed in the Blue Mountains. Oh, I should. The Blue Mountains. There's another mountain range. I'm making it a little bigger than it is. Called the Klamath Mountains. So the northeast and the southwest corners of the state of Oregon are pretty much the only places to look at exotic terrains in the state. Except for, of course, the Silesia story, which we're done talking about. So if we want to talk about these older exotic terrains in Oregon, we go to the Blue Mountains and we go to the Klamath Mountains. Pretty much everything else in the state of Oregon is buried by younger lava. Same idea. We got the problem of having too much young stuff on top. Finally, not visible on this map, but I'll try to do this. In the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas, we'll just call them the Sierra foothills. You remember we talked about the Sierra Nevada mountains in Eastern California last week, talking about the fact that we had these ghost volcanoes and we used to have the volcanic arc when the Farallon plate subducted, blah, blah, blah. Well, before you get into that crux of the granitic material, the diorite in the high Sierras, there are these places down lower, the foothills, that have some of these exotic terrain stories. Okay, let's cut to it. Daddy's going to use colored chalk. I didn't think I was going to, but I think we're going to do it. We're going to try it at least. Okay? So I want to do blue for IMS. This is probably barely visible to you, but I'm just trying it. This is green. You can't even really tell. This may be a disaster. We're going to make this green instead. Red instead. Okay? So this is what we just reviewed together, you and I. Intermontane, insular. Well, if we get down to the Blue Mountains, we got both of them. Can you see my colors? Kind of. If we go down to the Klamaths, if we go down to the foothills, my point is there has been lots of field work done in the last 50 years. I'll narrate because I don't think these colors are working. Can we find more of Quinellia, Cache Creek, Steckinia? Hell yes. Where? In a portion of the Blues, in a portion of the Klamaths, in a portion of the Sierra foothills. Can I find more of the insular, which is the Alexander and the Wrangellia story? Yes. A fraction of the Blue, a fragment of the Klamaths, a fragment of the foothills. In between, shit. It's wrong. Sorry. That's wrong. Gosh. All right, I want to keep these colors. Forgive me. Obviously, this is a lecture under construction. God dang. Okay, now I got to slow down because I want to make sure this is correct. I'm sorry about that. Please forgive me. Let's try it again. We cannot find good insular further south. We cannot find good Wrangellia or good Alexander down here. But what we can find are the three terrains within the intermontane superterrain. I'm going to say this two more times because I've effed up in a pretty big way, so I want to make sure we're not miscommunicating. Here it is one more time, two more times. The three guys that make up the intermontane superterrane, Quinellia, Cache Creek, and Stikenia. We can find again here in the Blue Mountains, Quinellia, Cache Creek, Stikenia. In the Klamath, Quinellia, Cache Creek, Stikenia. In the foothills, Quinellia, Cache Creek, Stikenia. One more time because I feel bad and then we move on. No insular terrain south of here, but there is plenty of good intermontane superterrain that accreted 170 million years ago regionally. And so the obvious question is, how much of the North Cascades is part of that story? The only part that everyone can agree on is that we do have blue, we do have Quinellia. Blue is Quinellia. Green, red is Stikenia. The only place that we know that we have some of the intermontane superterrane in northern Washington is between Kettle Falls and a town called Tonasket. So those that are really into it, some of our townies, our home viewers are very into this, and they have purchased a Roadside of Washington geology book, second edition by Marley Miller and Darrell Cowan. And they do an excellent job of talking about the drive on Washington State Route 20 from Anacortes across the North Cascades and driving between Tonasket and Kettle Falls. And they hit pretty hard the fact that we have good Quinellia in Washington. But my main message is the rest of this story, the green, the red, and the insular, it's very difficult to figure out what this exotic terrain stuff is. Who goes with whom? And therefore, teaching the rest of today, I'm just going to visit a couple places with you in Washington without really knowing how it plugs into British Columbia's story. Not because I don't know, because I don't think anybody really knows. And I dug in pretty hard to find correlations like that. I'm going to pause. Are we okay? Do you have, even with the error, do you feel like you've got the main message so far? That this is a regional story, but our big question is, why don't we have insular all the way up and down as opposed to just this stuff? I'm pausing one more time. We good? Anybody got any questions about this? JC. Correct. Yeah, the insular is only up here on Vancouver Island. A little bit in extreme northwestern Washington, but hardly any. Okay, so what does your outline say we're going to do next? We're going to Washington, because I want to make sure we have time for Baja, BC. So I would like to go to some specific places. I'm freelancing more than I thought I was going to. Okay, got it. Nope, I want to do this. Thank you for your patience. You may be waiting for some sort of picture showing ocean plates moving certain directions. And we don't have that information. We just don't have that information. And here's the main reason why. This looks kind of similar to what we've drawn before, and in a very cartoonish way, which is not very accurate, but I'm going to do it anyway. Intermontane, insular, and maybe at the most simplest scale, you're just thinking, okay, well, there must have been some sort of ocean floor conveyor belt, maybe the Farallon, you're thinking, coming at North America and being added. And let's start with that, even though there's lots of problems with that. Let's start with that idea. if we do bring insular superterrain and we accrete it, all this ocean crust is going to go down, right? It's going to go down the subduction zone. And as we discussed a couple of times earlier, we have found pieces of this ocean floor, this ocean plate. We've found pieces of it down in the lower mantle. Now, if we bring insular in as well, so now I'm just going to kind of move ahead in time. And now this is insular that has docked, and this is intermontane that has docked, and we're still doing this whole thing, but maybe we've peeled the trench back a little bit. The point I'm trying to make is, with this model of just bringing terrains in and having the conveyor belt just kind of dive and disappear, we shouldn't expect, should we, to find any ocean crust then? I'm going to say this again because I think I've lost some of you now, and I want to bring you back. If we have a simple model of an oceanic basaltic floor that is the main conveyor belt to bring these terrains to us, in the simple model, we should just always be destroying or removing or getting the ocean crust to go down the hole and not be part of our story. And yet, there are significant places in between the intermontane superterrain and the insular superterrain where we do have ocean floor that's not only survived this story, but it's 6,000 feet above sea level. It's 7,000 feet above sea level. It's like up here with us, ocean floor. And you're like, oh, didn't we do this like with Silesia, like a big oceanic plateau, and, we just lift the... No, I'm talking about the floor. I'm talking about the very bottom of the ocean that somehow is escaping doom, and part of the ocean floor getting transferred along with some of these big stories. If you're not following what I'm heading towards, I'm trying to give you a sense of what an ophiolite is. It's a strange word. We're to that portion of the lecture. We've jumped all the way down now. Ophiolites are created on the ocean floor. They are the ocean floor. There are some pillow basalts down there in the ophiolite. There's some green rock sent through the mail called serpentanite. Now, you did not have serpentanite in your lab. I'm going to show you some photos in just a second. Some serpentanite, the root of the word serpentanite is serpent. So it looks like snake skin. Looks like slippery, waxy, green snake skin. Like a serpent skin. But it's a metamorphic rock that's the result of taking the ocean floor and adding temperature and pressure. One more time before we look at pictures. We don't know really why parts of the original ocean floor out in the Pacific Ocean are up here with us. It doesn't make any sense. We know about ocean crust. It's dense. Remember the whole thing? Ocean crust is the stuff that subducts. Ocean crust is higher in density and it's thinner and the whole business. And that's true globally in general, but there are these strange ophiolites where the ocean floor managed to avoid its doom and somehow got up onto the other plate. And there are two places that are enticing to find the ophiolite. What are the names that you have? You've got names of ophiolites, Tim? Somebody, what are the names of the ophiolites on your frickin' outline? The Ingalls. So there is a place, X marks the spot, within an hour's drive of here. I'm going to show you pictures in just a second. You have it on your outline. It's the Ingalls Ophelite. And it's this place I've been encouraging you to hike. because it's an hour from here. You drive an hour and then you hike half an hour and you're in some beautiful green Ingalls Ophiolite. What's the age? 160 million years old. 160 million years old for the Ingalls Ophiolite. Hang on just a sec, Tim. There's a lot of ophiolites scattered here and there, but I want to grab one more famous ophiolite. It's down here in the Klamaths. Another circle with another X. This is the Josephine Ophiolite. You're all writing down. That's wonderful. Thank you for staying engaged. Here it is one more time. There's ophiolite north of Ellensburg that's 160 million years old. It's called the Ingalls Ophiolite. There's ophiolite in the Klamath Mountains of southern Oregon called the Josephine Ophiolite. It's also 160 million years. It's identical in look, it's identical in age, it's identical in geochemistry. The Ingalls and the Josephine. What is going on here? I'm coming to you. Do you have I'm looking for two different ideas for why we would have matching ophiolite, one in central Oregon and one in southwestern Oregon. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try. Why would we have those two identical things separated by so many miles? What's one possibility? Tim?
Just like Silesia, when it was accreted, it kind of had a portion that went north and then a portion that stayed with us.
Oh.
Something along those lines can happen as well.
Oh, didn't see that one coming. Tim's thinking like Silesia, where we had Silesia and then the Alaska version, the Yakutat, and Tim's imagining. How did we explain that one, by the way, Tim?
Was there a spreading ridge at one point?
There was, but somebody else. What was our main reason that a bunch of that Silesia Ocean Plateau ended up in Alaska? What was the mechanism to get it up there? Nobody? Nobody? What the fuck?
Was it a
Huh?
slip fault?
Yeah?
Yeah.
What's the name of the fault? The Queen something or other, the Queen Majesty of, it's Women's Day, everybody. All right. The Queen Charlotte fault, thank you. So, thank you for the scenic route, but we got there. I'll take 10s and run with it. I'm going to use a big white line. Two identical ophiolites in age and everything else. One way to explain them being separated is to have a large strike-slip fault that took all of the 160 million year old ophiolite together down here after it was accreted. Remember, we don't know why it got accreted. We don't know why it got added to us, but it did, for sure. And then break that puppy in half, send half of that ophiolite up here to central Washington. That's one possible interpretation. Are you keeping up with me? Original stuff that's on the ocean floor in the Pacific gets added mysteriously to the edge of North America, gets lifted out of the water, gets added to, let's say, southern Oregon. Then a strike-slip fault. You're like, what's the name? We don't know. It's underneath this frickin' basalt, man. But at some point, one idea is that the ophiolite was split in half, and half of that ophiolite's in central Washington, and the other half's down here. The other idea that I don't think I'll take the time to fish for is that you do it without needing a fault, and you just have a simple, I'll do it. Instead of a fault, could we just have a bunch of ophiolite making a band along the margin of our continent, kind of like what we were doing here? Like, do you need a fault? Maybe there's a whole band, B-A-N-D. Maybe there's a whole zone or a whole band of identical ophiolite in the identical age running directly or continuously from central Washington to southwestern Oregon. Both are possible, difficult to prove which is which, again, because everything is basically not visible to us. And so you're connecting dots between places that don't have a lot in common with each other. We got hands now, but before I go to the hands, I want to say one more thing. I'm setting you up for this thing called Baja, BC, where it is possible to take portions of terranes and move them north a long ways. And this idea of taking an ophiolite and cutting it and taking half of it and moving it north is a thing among many geologists. JC, what do you got?
So the ophiolite is a result of oceanic crust, like under high compression and temperature from ocean places.
Yes.
How would that just mean that the band of it would have to be a result of like continuous subduction in like a specific area underneath Washington, or it's somehow making its way up?
That's the thinking. JC's really, by the way, JC, you didn't speak much in the first half of the class, and you're nodding, you're talking, it's great to see. Keep it going. Keep it going for 2 more days. Nice job. So JC's wondering about the metamorphism, because we know we go from original basalt to this green waxy rock you're about to see, I promise, in some photos. And JC's kind of wondering about when that metamorphism is happening, maybe. And it's happening during this mysterious process of getting it out of the ocean and then cramming it onto the edge. And that cramming, it's all cartoonish. It's a great question. Don't really have the answer. But some associate the serpentanite with accretionary wedges. If you remember our big stuff out on the coast of the Olympic Peninsula, where we were going from sediment to metamorphic rock, we could do the same with the basalt if it's a grander scale. Nice job there. Tim, something else? No. Anybody else?
So where did blues miss the ophiolite?
Why isn't there any ophiolite in the blues, says Glenn from Spokane, who drove over today. There is some, but I'm grabbing these 2 that are perfectly identical. So yes, there's some ophiolite scattered throughout much of this, but it's just a kind of a teaching choice. I want to make sure, let me split down the home audience, I want to make sure we can see some of this stuff, finally get down to a scale where we can comprehend what's going on. That's the hope. And then we'll finish with some Baja, BC. Tim has another thought. Go ahead.
The ophiolite is the northwest, but we're talking like long past that area?
Oh, well, I'm going to take you there right now. Thank you. Okay, good. We're about to go to Mount Stewart, which I've already discussed in northern Washington, north of Ellensburg. And you can see how Mount Stewart is just on the southern tip of this incredible collage. And this is the area that we have subdivided into either intermontane or insular. I mentioned this very quickly last time, that Baja, California, part of Mexico, where home viewer Saber is, that's the newest exotic terrain. This is an exotic terrain giving birth at the moment, or North America is giving birth to an exotic terrain. Because of the San Andreas Fault developing in the last 20 million years, we're taking a piece of North America that should be connected to Mexico, and it was for many tens of millions of years. And in the future, this sliver is going to be sent out to sea. And so we're finally giving back to the global community. We've been taking gifts for the last 200 million years. We're finally getting a conscience. Nice job by us. Bullshit. But this does work for us. And we are now realizing that Ellensburg, which is located here, is perfectly positioned as a jumping off point to get into all these colors up here, which is the exotic terrain story. So here you go. Tim grew up here. Some others maybe have a better feel for the local geology and geography than others. Photo from Menashtash Ridge, looking north over this building, looking north to the skyline in the Stewart Range. Oh man, why do I have this bleeped out look today? I don't get it. Move on. Can you read that shit? You can't read that. Put what? Student camera up. Thank you, Tim. Hopefully will work. So when you get up on Table Mountain, north of Ellensburg, that's the end of the line for the Columbia River basalts, and then you can see how drastically things change. We're into the exotic terranes, baby, before you know it. Now, if you hike up to Ingalls Lake, so you remember the name of the ophiolite is Ingalls Ophiolite. If you're not a hiker, if you've never been in the backcountry and that sounds scary to you, you can also get to some of this rock by just driving on US 97. Has anybody driven over Blewett Pass? Does anybody recognize that name? A few of you have. It's on the way to Leavenworth or Wenatchee from here. So if you cross Blewett Pass and you start looking on the left side of the road, you find this same stuff. So in other words, some of this Ingalls Ophiolite is right next to the road. Well, what I'm showing you is a bunch of orange rock, and I'm guessing that hundreds of people hike this trail every summer, and they go, I wonder why that rock's orange. That's weird. And then they move on to talking about pop culture or something. I don't know. But if you stop and look carefully on this trail up to Ingalls Lake, it's only the outer portion of the rock that's orange. The actual rock is green. It's the Serpentanite. It's the Ingalls. How old? 160 million years old. How did it form? Ocean floor. How did it get there? We don't know. Is it connected originally to the Josephine Ophiolite in southern Oregon? Probably. But as you get up to Ingalls Pass, and this is long ago when our middle school aged children were moody as hell. We had a big meltdown after this photo was taken. But Max was walking on orange stuff, which is the Ingalls. It's right there. It makes up the whole set of foothills just south of the Stewart Range. Serpentanite, 160. That number's wrong, 160. There are other places where you find this beautiful green rock all through northwestern Washington, up by Cle Easton, Bellingham, Burlington, up by Bellingham. All this green rock, whether it's green schist or blue schist or serpentinite, is originally this ocean rock, and it's still a bit of a mystery why that's all here with us instead of going down. So you're just getting a taste of these different origin stories for these exotic terranes. And I'm saving the last 10 minutes for something that's even a little bit more mind-blowing than that. Still don't get why we're so bleached out today, but I'll figure it out at some point. This is me just taking notes from myself long ago and trying to connect the dots between the blues and the Klamaths and the Sierras and what we do know about the exotic terrain rocks north of us. I mean, these geologic maps are off-putting for most people. It's just a bunch of complicated colors. You're like, what are these colors? What am I supposed to do? It's a whole set of skills that takes quite a while to learn. But once you develop the ideas, then things become pretty exciting. And speaking of that, we finish with an idea called Baja, BC. Give me the dates again, please. Give me the dates again, please, for Baja, BC. What was that now?
85 to 55.
Oh, yeah, Pedro. Damn right, son. 85 to 55 million years ago. Let me finish the slides by showing you the concept, and then I'll try to do a little bit on the chalkboard in just a few minutes. Baja, BC. This mountain, which is right there where I was showing you the orange/green rock. This is the mountain you can see from here, is the centerpiece of this whole thing called Baja, BC. Mount Stewart is made out of granite. We know that granite forms as a magma chamber underneath the ground, slowly. We've already done this a million times. We know about granite, or diorite, doesn't matter, right? Plutonic igneous rock. Well, the granite of Mount Stewart has been studied for paleomagnetism. You know the word magnetism. Let's just stick a paleo in front of it. I'm not going to write it out for you. Hopefully you can just keep up with me now. And the people who have been studying this Mount Stewart granite have studied minerals in the granite of Mount Stewart. And some of those minerals are magnetic. So the concept is, I'm going to give it to you verbally, What's the next picture? The concept is if you are a blob of magma cooling slowly underground, but you have minerals that are magnetic, those magnetic grains are going to align themselves with the invisible magnetic field of the earth during the time that that granite cooled, or that liquid magma cooled. I'll cut to the chase. We know the position of the Earth's magnetic field today. It's an invisible magnetic field that what makes our needles and our compasses go the way they do, and other things that are magnetic. By studying the paleomagnetism in the granite of Mount Stewart, it's been deduced that the Mount Stewart granite went from liquid to solid down in Baja, Mexico. What? What? No. You were just talking about Mount Stewart, like north of town. Yeah, I was. What are you saying? Baja, BC says the entire insular frickin' superterrane, including Mount Stewart granite, was down in Baja, Mexico, and between 85 and 55 million years ago, that crust that was originally in Baja, Mexico, is now in British Columbia, Baja, BC. Exotic terrains originally in Mexico and moved almost 2,000 miles north from Baja to BC, and the southern, or the trailing edge, let me go back, the trailing edge of that whole block is Mount Stewart. I'm not going to go to the chalkboard. I just want to stick with this. So this is an idea that was originally proposed by paleomagnetic people, which is like 3 dudes in 1968, And everybody else is like, what are they? No, that's bullshit. No way. And here we are in 2021, more than 50 years later, and Baja, BC is still a minority opinion. It's not accepted by most geologists. But your instructor has been very interested in Baja, BC, and interested in this concept of taking this crust. Look what we're doing. This is half of Washington, I might add. This is not just Mount Stewart. This is all of this rock that was accreted by 100 million years ago and moved north, like multiple states. Obviously, I'm interested. And in the last few years, I've been interviewing the OGs of Baja, BC, who are still with us, and trying to understand their data, understand how they've been kind of marginalized in the geological community, and if there is a future of finding new data that will be a smoking gun, essentially, to say this is no longer an idea. The reason I decided not to go to a chalkboard is because I want to get some reaction from you. If you've got, the energy is great right now, so you're very interested in this topic. But I also want to show you the proposed idea. Are you looking out in the water during this time? Let's not look at the block in Baja that's now in BC. Let's look at what they have on these maps for what things were like during this time. Shit. What do you notice? Okay, what are the names of the plates? We can read together now. Let's sound it out. Farallon and Kula. So Kula was brought up just briefly at some point last week, I forget, and I said, let's not talk about the Kula. Well, we're going to talk about it right now. If you are a fan of Baja BC, again, and still a minority opinion, even though there is incredible data now, by the way. It's paleomagnetism recorded in granites from British Columbia down to Mexico. It's not just Mount Stewart. Okay, it's been checked and double checked and triple checked and different locations from British Columbia down to Baja. It's more than just granite. Now Daddy's getting fired up. It's more than just granites. There's some fossils that were definitely closer to the equator that are now further north. There's mineral grains called zircons, which were deposited by rivers further to the south than they are now. It's more than just that. But my point is this: if you are a Baja BC believer, I hate to use that word, but I will here. If you're a Baja BC believer, you need the Kula plate out in the water. You need an ocean plate moving north. And that's what these cartoonish maps are showing. There's no Kula plate there. This is at the beginning, right? 85 million years ago, whatever the number is, ignore it. 85 million years ago, we have no Kula. Uh-oh, we got Baja BC happening. In other words, we have this set of exotic terrains moving north, like heading north in a hurry. We need the Kula plate moving away from a spreading ridge. Does that sound familiar? Spreading ridge that is intersecting the western margin of North America. And then as long as the Kula plate is offshore, moving north, we have our Baja BC movement. And so a question you might have is, if Baja BC is the thing, how come it's not happening anymore? Why are you saying 85 to 55? Why did Baja BC stop 55? We got rid of the Kula plate. Well, why? What do we know about 55 million years ago? That's our Silesia story, man. Remember? Our beginning of this exotic terrain story is where we end our exotic terrain story. The Silesia time is marking the end of this exotic terrain chapter and this Baja BC chapter. There must be some things you want repeated, or just, I know we're freelancing right here at the end, but this is a fun part of this class that will continue to get expanded. I got 3 minutes with you. Tim.
So I'm curious as to what is the other explanation that is so convincing keeping Baja BC from being the main?
Great. Tim says, so what's the argument that's so, why is a majority of the folks saying this is not a thing? And why are they so sure that this data is not correct? They don't believe the paleomagnetism. They don't believe the workers. And you need a certain expertise to drill cores from granites, carefully measure the orientation of those cores, those little cylinders of granite. You take them back to your lab and then you measure the orientation of the magnetic grains. So, 50 years ago, it was valuable. It's like, this is out of left field. We just learned about plate tectonics. Now they're saying 2,000 miles of movement. So it was just like, no, because, I can't handle this now. Well, if you take the time to look at all this data and all this different kind of data, it's mostly just people ignoring this data. It's not even looking at it carefully and analyzing and saying, I have a counter argument for all of this. That's my best way to address it. And that's why I'm so interested in spreading some of these ideas, because I just don't think it's gotten enough attention among all geologists. It's complicated, but it potentially is the main story of this whole thing, as opposed to what we were just doing. What were we doing here, by the way? What were we doing? Did I erase it? I guess I did. No, here. I think you were doing what most geologists have done to this point. Without being an expert in exotic terrains, they're just imagining stuff coming in from the west. Like they're all out there. All these ferries are coming our way. Are we going to get on the 1010 or the 1115? Or you can see them all coming. And they're all moving straight west to east. Well, that's, of course, the simplest, most, that's the simplest visual for us. But when you start having evidence that it's probably unlikely that an ocean plate is going to come straight east and subduct. What if the ocean plate is coming northeast, or oblique subduction? Then you develop strike slip faulting. Then you develop some of these complications. One more before we quit. JC.
And still, just wanted to bring this back up when we're talking about ocean plates coming this way.
Yeah.
Are we actually talking about them coming this way? Or are we talking about the North American continent moving towards?
A little of both. So even on today's planet, every tectonic plate is moving. So JC's getting clarification on, are we really moving the oceans against a fixed North America or vice versa? Let's have them both move, but we're definitely transferring material from an oceanic setting into a continental setting. How many downtowners we got left, Emily?
3.
Got 3 left. If you haven't had a downtowner, that's got your name on it. Thank you to Anonymous and Issaquah for gifting. Thank you for putting up with that particularly freewheeling discussion. I think it worked to a degree. We shift tomorrow and Thursday to very close proximity. We're very close to Ellensburg, talking about the Teanaway Formation and a couple of goodies to find. Thank you. I love you. We'll see you tomorrow. Let me go visit with folks for just a little bit, and then we will do some live Q&A. Hang on just a sec. Thank you. Here's one if we're out. I just took one bite. I'm fully vaccinated. All right, Jordan. Nice. I'm glad you got one. We good? Everybody good?
Yep.
Thanks. You're into it, man. Keep it
I
going.
must say, dude, I went skiing on Friday at Mission Ridge,
You did.
and like I was noticing all the cliffs and geology. And all
All
stuff,
right.
and I never even like noticed that stuff before. I just
Good.
passed it by and didn't think about it. But
Good.
it's cool to notice that stuff now.
Nice. Thank you for reporting that, Casey.
Yeah, man.
I'm glad you survived while skiing at 60 miles an hour looking at the cliffs above you.
Yeah, it was pretty scary. We went at night, but I made it.
Good.
And, just getting around.
Pedro, nice job today. Would you like one more?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay, let's do a little Q&A with you guys. Today could have been a little better. But you can see the effect of practice with certain lectures. If you've been giving them, more than 40 times, then you kind of know what you want to do, but sometimes it's kind of rough. Marbles collector, could a jump of the subduction explain the 160 million year old Ophiolytes? The Ophiolites stayed behind, wasn't pushed down no more when the subduction moved west. I guess I just keep getting stuck on the fact that we know as a rule that ocean crust goes down a subduction zone. So I just, there's a process called abduction, which is the way to try to explain taking this ocean crust and getting it up onto the overriding plate, but I just can't get it to work for my head. Myra, thanks for the question. Myra, are there remnants of the southern ancient coastline attached to the eastern portions of Baja, BC? Remnants of the southern ancient coastline attached to the eastern portion. Probably not, Myra, because this isn't even going to work. There's so much strike slip faulting where we just keep taking a terrain and cutting it and cutting it and cutting it. And we didn't get to that point in our class. Here's a better answer for Tim's question, by the way. Tim's question was, what's the argument against this Baja, BC? And one way to argue against it is like, where is this big fault? Nobody's found this big fault. Like you keep showing, this is them talking to the Baja, BC people. Like you keep showing us this huge block of crust moving so quickly to the north. Where is the Baja, BC fault? And there probably wasn't one big Baja BC fault. So maybe part of the problem is the way Baja BC people are presenting their ideas. They're showing these cartoons and therefore kind of giving the impression there has to be one coherent block with one major fault. It's probably dozens and dozens of smaller strike slip faults that together allow this movement to happen. Therefore, we can't find an east coast of that, Myra. Thank you. We got the county convention over here. We got Jeff and Glenn having all sorts of fun over there. Is all that jade in BC ophiolite? Thank you, Mary. I struggle with jade. Generally, the answer is yes, that green rocks from blue schist to green schist to serpentanite to jade to nephrite, it's all in that general category. But there's specifics that I don't know about temperature and pressure conditions and how you get to kind of that gem quality stuff. But at our level, yes. Mike's asking something similar. Is serpentanite a post-metamorphic form of serpentine? Oh, no, I'm sorry. You're asking something different. It's just a technicality, Mike. Serpentanite, as I use it, is the name of the metamorphic rock. It's composed of metamorphic minerals called serpentine. So, I mean, I think even in advanced geology, people use those terms interchangeably. Serpentine and serpentanite. Rick, is there a good place to see the Josephine Ophiolite? Cave Junction area, question mark. I don't know the geography of the Klamath/Siskiyous very well. But Marley Miller has a roadside geology book of Oregon, 2nd edition, and she's got excellent maps. I'll get you right to some of that. I don't even really, I kind of cheated because I don't even really know where the Josephine Ophiolite is within that kind of circle called the Klamath. Ram, 100 million years back is which direction moved the North American craton? Well, it's a good question. There's lots of things to keep straight mentally, and one of them is if we're going back 100 million years or more, then we have to factor in, don't we, the global geography. And I know that basically since Pangea, North America has generally moved away from the equator until about 60 million years ago, and then it started to move southwest. This has all been documented. It's not an idea, by the way. So you can find, Christopher Scotese has an excellent YouTube channel with these animations, and they're all based in science. They're not ideas. So without knowing exactly the direction of North America's craton 100 million years ago, I would visualize this kind of pathway. Starting 200 million years ago, North America goes kind of northwest and then southwest starting about 60 or so. So I guess the answer is northwest. But these are all relative motions, so I'm not sure if it's helping our situation here. But thank you for the question. Leah, what happened to the Kula plate? One way to answer that is you just destroy the spreading center. Yeah, if you want to kill a plate, you snuff out the spreading rise that is creating the plate. And that's all because of North America interacting with the spreading ridge, a topic that I'm going to be studying carefully in 351 next quarter. Doug, how do you know Mount Stewart has not tilted? Thank you, Doug. There's plenty of arguments against Baja BC, and that's certainly one of them. And again, this is not from, so there has been folding, multiple folding events. Again, we'll be looking at this next quarter in 351. Locally, lots of 3 different folding events in the last 100 million years here in central Washington. And so you go, well, so you're measuring the orientation of the magnetite grains from 93 million years ago. Are you taking into account these folding events? I guess they are. I'm not an expert in how they do this. But I keep coming back to the fact that you go to the Peninsula Ranges, Bathurst in Southern California and Baja, Mexico, and you go to some of these other places, and all of this checks out. They all have these weird paleomagnetic declinations. So even locally, if you have an argument that there's some folding event that hasn't been taken into account and there is some local tilting, at this point, with more than 50 years of paleomag work, just don't know how you can just say it, it's meaningless. I just don't. Saber reports lots of faults everywhere in Baja. Good to know, Saber. John, what evidence of places BBC longitudinally? Is there an allochthonous alternative? What evidence of places Baja BC longitudinally? I don't know how to answer that simply, John, but there's been work with plutons from Alaska down to Mexico. There's been work with zircon grains that have been found in sedimentary rocks that were riding on top of these. I'm guessing you're not asking that question, but I can't figure it out right now. I'm always a little distracted when there's another conversation in the room, but you know that about me. It's like Muffler Boy or something else. I just can't. Cosmic effective Izanagi plate subduction and its disappearance on the movement. You know more than I do. Good job. Peter, if there was a spreading ridge between Kula and Farallon plates, why was the Farallon going the same direction as the Kula? I don't think it was. I think generally, again, I'm going to address this in 351. If you're a Baja BC... Oh, yeah. Well, that's just an error. Never noticed that. Thank you. I think this is more in line with the visual that, well, yeah, that was either an error or a poor judgment in drawing those arrows. It's a spreading ridge. You got stuff coming away from the spreading ridge. And generally, if you favor the Kula going north, then you have the Farallon coming obliquely at North America, like moving to the southeast, essentially. So there's a lot to work out here. And yeah, I'll leave it there. Let's do 3 more. I got to go visit with these guys. You miss Muffler Boy. I don't. Ion Bear 3, seem to recall Earth magnetic field has reversed multiple times. How might that relate here? Thank you. It's another thing that's commonly brought up. I'm sure it's exhausting for the paleomagnetic people who ever give a public talk, even among geologists maybe. And this is always brought up. Have you taken into account polar wander? Have you taken into account normal and reverse polarity multiple times? And I'm sure they want to go, of course I have. What do you think? This is my specialty. Are you telling me for the first time that magnetic field is flipped multiple times? I fucking wrote the textbook on that. What are you doing? So they know that stuff better than us. You rely on expertise, and until you actually sit down and read a paleomagnetism book from front cover to back cover, and you study this for multiple decades, it's one of those kind of niche areas in geology that it's part of the problem. It's just hard to be an expert in that area and also relate it to these other things. So they have factored all that into account is my question. It's a common question that I'm sure they get every time they open their mouth. I'm talking about Merle Beck and Berningshausen and others who have spent a whole career publishing on this. I'm down to live here. We'll do 2 more. Papagino, what is the current thinking on western subduction and then eastern subduction? I did my best to be current with that before Christmas time. I haven't thought about it since Christmas time, but in general, using Karin Siglock's lower mantle tomography and the other things we were working with before Christmas in that Exotic Terrain A to Z live stream series, I think, I'm going to regret saying this, but I'm trying to remember. I think the Western subduction business was really pushed for the ocean floor that existed between these two super terranes. So that I kept pushing for westward subduction beneath a fixed insular, if you recall. And then as soon as we collide with Insular 100 million years ago, shortly after that, we're done with western subduction. But I don't remember the details. So we'll go back to that. I have some general ideas of what I'll do in 351, and much of it will tie to ocean plate reconstruction and some of this other thing, stuff that we've been struggling with that I still don't come close to understanding. One more. Joni, would I do a tour day trips with townies to Eastern Washington sites and give a talk? Well, anytime soon, the answer is no. I'm still trying to be a responsible citizen.
That was on my map this morning.
I've got some ideas going about how to move forward when the restrictions ease up. But anytime soon, I think it would be inappropriate for me to try to gather people together out in the field. Okay. I want to visit with Glenn from Spokane and Jeff from Ellensburg, so let me grab my mug and give you a toast. A toast to you. Here's to you and your health and your reliability as you attend all of these sessions live. Here's to hard workers of local businesses, including Jeff Klindworth at Vinman's Bakery in downtown Ellensburg, but not just the restaurant industry, all local businesses that are really inspirational in how hard they work and how dedicated they are to their local communities. Here's to them. And I think I'll keep showing this if I can find it. I think I'll keep showing this tomorrow and Thursday so that people know that I won't be seeing you for much of the month of March. Last time I'll see you will be Thursday of this week. But these live streams will continue at the end of the month with the next class that I'm teaching. And you have the background to understand what we'll be doing. You'll have more background than many of the students in the room, even though they're seniors in geology. Much of what we'll do in here is foreign, is exotic to many of them. So you'll have a head start over those guys. The old mouth wasn't working quite as well as I like it to this morning. Who knows why? We'll see what tomorrow is like. Tomorrow is Liberty Gold. Thursday is Ellensburg Blue Agates. Thank you for joining us. I love you. Goodbye.
Well, I don't know where south of Cliff, the Cliff Tech, the Cliff Tech, it's still everywhere. Oh, you're in Grand Walk.